Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another exciting virtual tour. I'm your guide this evening, Chris Staudinger, and it's important to mention, I think, tonight that I am actually Captain Chris Staudinger. I am a Coast Guard certified Marine captain with my auxiliary sail endorsement. No big deal. But if it makes you feel more comfortable on our journey tonight, know that it's true. And for those of you tuning in for the very first time, I'm extra excited to welcome all of you to another City of Tacoma Historic Preservation Office sponsored tour, getting you out and letting you know more about the great city of Tacoma, the city of destiny, where rails meet sails. There's so many good things to say about this place. And fortunately for me, I get the distinct pleasure of being able to say them all to you tonight. So how are you? How are you guys doing? I'm excited for everyone to get the opportunity to experience the Tacoma waterfront tonight, because I think one of my I don't know if it's a pet peeve, the things that deeply grieves me is that the city of Tacoma is a peninsula, right? Like, it is entirely surrounded by water for this huge swath of it. And I think the interaction with the waterfront is way down. You know, you think of so many other coastal cities and you think of them as like coastal cities. But when you go out on the Tacoma waterfront on Commencement Bay, there's such small interaction, I think, with the waterfront. And I hope to fix that today. So if you guys are excited to get out there, shall we do it? Yeah, also, here we go. We're doing our best. We got our tech team blocking and deleting comments right now. Please don't pay for anything. All of our virtual tours are always free. You will never be asked to input your personal information or to pay for them. They're just broadcast live. And we're doing our best right now to take care of all that. But if you guys have any questions, please just let us know. Because as you can see, we're live and interactive right now. And so we can address your concerns as they come up, which is awesome. It looks like we've already got some sweet questions right now. Yeah, okay. So yeah, there's a ton of debris underwater, Marine Park. I'm going to address that for you guys tonight. We've got some sweet historic photos of the area. We've got footage that we've recorded as we've actually gone through and kayaked this. And it was a joint effort. Because I took a sail kayak for this journey, and my wife and our friend Rusty took SUPs, stand-up paddleboards, for this expedition. So it was a lot of paddling that went into the research and presentation of tonight's virtual tour, and I hope that it pays off. So for those of you who are just joining us, once again, I'm Captain Chris Staudinger. This is another free historic virtual tour of the city of Tacoma. Tonight is a kayak tour of Tacoma's waterfront, and it is brought to you by the City of Tacoma's Historic Preservation Office, which I imagine their rep Lauren is here. So if you guys have any questions, shoot them out there. She's going to be, yeah, there she is. She'll be answering questions as we go along. So let's dive in, as the kids say. Let's see if I can get you guys to our virtual interactive experience. Here we go. Let's introduce you to a good-looking friend of mine, myself.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I'm Captain Chris Staudinger, and this is our kayak tour of Tacoma's waterfront.
So I launched my kayak from the Point Defiance Boathouse Marina and used their slick water elevator, which is a huge benefit because as you're coming around the corner here, this is this is the Dune Park on the north end of Tacoma here, and it's right next to the Tacoma Yacht Club. And there, as you can see, it's not the kind of place where you want to like drag a kayak down to the waterfront. And my sail kayak is particularly heavy, so getting it into the water is much easier launching from this bad boy right here. This is the water elevator at the Point Defiance Marina. And as you can see, it's so cool. It goes up 2 stories. There's boat storage on the 2nd and 1st floor. And then these elevators drop you straight down into the water. So once you roll your boat on there, it just submerges you and you can take off from there, which I love. So like I said, we're coming around the corner here and you can see the tide is pretty far out right here. And there's a pretty steep flux on tides that you'll notice when you're out and about in Tacoma. And it's a pretty extreme. It's not the most extreme in the world, obviously, but it can get very intense. And I apologize in advance right now because a lot of the footage of me cruising out here is going to include my incredibly white legs. And there was simply nothing that I could do about that. It's just a hazard of the job. Just to the left here, you get to see Vashon Island, which is directly across the waterfront there. And there is actually a ferry, a Washington State Department of Transportation ferry, that actually takes people from Point Defiance over to Vashon. And there's no bridge to Vashon. So if you're going to live out there, work out there, or play out there, you have to take one of the ferries, either the one at the north end or the one down there at the south end that goes from Point Defiance. Both of them are great. I have nothing to complain about the ferries out there. They're really phenomenal. But I mean, if you're going to live on an island, you got to commit to the island life. Now, that was not the ferry that you saw out there. That is one of the many large ocean tankers and cargo ships that come to Commencement Bay. And one of the things that makes Tacoma's waterfront so exceptional is the fact that it is a working waterfront. The Port of Tacoma is the largest, both in square hectaacres, I guess. Hectaacres is what we're measuring here, but also in amount that it processes. The largest port in the state of Washington. A lot of people assume that Seattle's is bigger. And technically, it's a joint port at this point in history, but Tacoma's is technically larger. So not that size matters, but it's worth knowing that this is true. So let's actually take you guys. I want to show you some of the cool parts of Tacoma. So a lot of this is interactive, like video from when I actually went on the kayak out there. But a lot of this too is going to be historic content because I want you to be able to see both what the waterfront looks like today and what it looks like in the imagination of historians throughout the region. It's always important for me on all of these tours to acknowledge the fact that everywhere that we are currently right now and the spaces that we're talking about are the ancestral lands of the Puyallup Nation. And while the Puyallup Nation is still here today, just on the other side of I-5, from a lot of the places we talk about, all of this is originally theirs, and that is worth acknowledging in everything that we do. So here's a cool shot I have of Point Defiance Park. And I'm trying to think, this one I think was taken in 1948 as my guess on this one here, but you can see how the park developed really nicely. And this was just kind of, Point Defiance is special to me because so much of what we're going to talk about tonight is how the timber industry both literally and figuratively changed the landscape of Tacoma forever. But that large section at the top of the peninsula is still old growth forest, and we're lucky to have it basically because the US military requisitioned it and was going to use it as a defensive point in case of an invasion, essentially. Since none of that ever happened and they never built a fort out there, the Point Defiance area got turned over eventually to Metro Parks, and we have this preserved section of old growth forest out there. What you're looking at right here is the development of the duck pond. That bowl in the section there is the rose garden, and then you can actually see the boathouse and marina up there on the end. And in fact, you could just barely make it out. In the very top right there, you can see the ferry that goes to Vashon. While it is admittedly different today than it was in 1948, this is what it would have looked like back then. Let's see if I can switch you guys over here really quick because it's just a cool place. So this was the boathouse. It was started as a project in 1939. I think it was like approximately 350 by 130 feet, give or take. I think it probably missed a couple feet in there. But it was multiple levels from the very start, and they designed it so that you could have access to that sweet water out there. And that narrow passage that goes in between Point Defiance and Tacoma contains some really incredible waterways, and very frequently orcas, whales, a ton of seals. You wouldn't believe the amount of seals out there. And most recently, dolphins. There's a pod of dolphins that have been cruising around Commencement Bay. And you can see all of that when you're out there. Here's another aerial shot for you. So that is the Tacoma Yacht Club area right out there on the left, that spit of land that goes out there. And that is adjacent to this sort of boathouse area down here. And you can see the ferry down there as well. And then at the bottom part of that photo is the Point Defiance boathouse. And there's always been a restaurant out there. Most recently and currently it is the Anthony's restaurant. But you can see it's changed pretty dramatically since the 1940s. So we're going to go middle back, not way back to Puyallup Nation time, but this photo is from 1888, and it shows the tremendous amount of influx of tall ships coming to the Tacoma waterfront. And this would have been very common sight that you would see out there, because again, lumber and milling was the first industry to really take over in this area. And so they would line up all these boards like this and then load them onto tall ships and then back out. And Commencement Bay is a naturally deep water port. I think at its deepest point, it's approximately 600 feet deep. And it's got a really dramatic grade. So you could get a tall ship, right up to the shoreline there, and you didn't have to build a dock very far out to accommodate that. Similar thing with the Foss Waterway, which is our end destination today. We're actually going to paddle our way all the way into the Foss Waterway, but it's not 600 feet deep, but it is a wonderful waterway that has been made to accommodate tall ships over its history there. So let's see. Oh, good. Let's double check here. So as we cruise down, we're going to start to encounter this. This is a picture from 1893, I believe, and this is the Tacoma Smelter. Originally, it was the Tacoma Smelting and Refining Company, and that was established, it was owned. It wasn't established, but it was most notably owned by William Rust, who you may have guessed, based on the name, is the founder of Ruston. Originally, he built that small town to accommodate all the workers who were working at the smelter, and he called it Smelter, and they hated it. So they renamed the town in honor of their founder, William Rust, giving us Ruston. So I'm going to take you guys back to our kayaking footage here, and you'll actually get to see, I know someone has already asked about all that wreckage out there, and you get to see it here in a second. So as we're going out here, you get to see, luckily because we went when the tide was low, all of those piers and pilings out there. And this is my helicopter kayak. As we go down, you can see a lot of those pilings left over, and the majority of those are left over from the lumber industry. The most notable of which is farther down, sort of by where the Silver Cloud Hotel is on the waterfront, and we'll see that in a second. But it is the old mill that used to be set up right outside of Old Town. And you can see a lot of them. There have been little businesses that have been put out on piers. All of these are law offices and restaurants out here. All of these are built on pilings out into the waterfront. And right ahead, that is the Point Defiance Marina. To the right is Vashon Island, just behind that cargo ship out there. So let's take you guys back down to the waterfront here really quick. See if I can take you down. And I think if I can really quick, I should be able to give you guys an aerial view of everything that we're talking about here really quick. Because I know that always helps, especially establish the people that aren't from Tacoma. So to give you guys some more context, this is where I launched from, the Point Defiance Marina and Boathouse right here. And you can see that's the water elevator right down there. And then the ferry launches from here and goes across to Vashon. And then currently we're talking about this area right here. So this is Point Ruston. And if you haven't been to Point Ruston recently, it is a magical kingdom of delight and wonder. They've got like 4-person bicycles. They've got a farmer's market out there. They've got a splash pad water park. It is truly an incredible space. But it didn't always used to be. It actually was an ecological waste site for a period of time there, because the smelting company, Asarco, operated out of there from essentially the 1880s until the 1980s. Well, was out there, didn't operate that entire time. And then eventually they destroyed the entire thing, cleaned it up, and then it built this thriving community out there, which is really impressive. But we're going to cruise down along that, past the Point Ruston Historic Ferry, and then down here. So where we were looking at those pilings is right here by the lobster shop. We're going to go by Duke Seafood and this beautiful stretch down here. And so the Dickman Mill Park is the place that we're going to talk about today, which I think has the most wooden pilings and piers out there. And this was all lumber mill, as well as shipping area. So a lot of those tall ships that you saw from that photograph would have been lined up out here so that they could get access to all that timber coming through. And there's still quite a bit of the timber industry prevalent in that park section right down there. And then we're going to cruise farther down past Chinese Reconciliation Park, past the 2 mystery ships, which I'll tell you about, farther down, past the Temco grain silos, which I've mentioned in quite a few of our tours, and then finally down here into the Foss Waterway. And one thing that you'll notice a lot as we're going down there is the coloration of the water, and that comes from the Puyallup River here, which this long, muddy stretch is one of the greatest waterways in the area, and empties out into Commencement Bay here. And depending on the strength and the flow of the river and whether the tide is receding or coming into the bay, you'll get different stratification of the water there. That's really incredible to see. So without further ado, let's take you back to our kayak section here, if I can bring it back up. Because we're about to go past Old Town, and it's going to be the first time that you get to see my wife Tani doing her paddleboard experience out here. So let's dive back in. So here we are, we're cruising down along Old Town right now. And one of the things that I love about doing any kayak experience out here is that you think that you're hugging the shore, and then really depending on the current and the tide, you get pulled out to the water pretty quickly if you're not paying attention. So we're actually quite a ways out right here, but we're currently passing that Dickman Mill pilings out there. And you can see it's just an extraordinary amount of timber out there. But if you look at the historic photos of it, it's changed dramatically over the last 100 years. And in fact, Grit City Magazine has a really good time lapse of the Dickman Mill pilings over time out there. Currently, we're looking right up into Old Town and at a lot of the recreational docks out there. And to give you a better look, because I am both a gentleman and a scholar, we're going to take you up into the air really quick here. So this is the sundial out here at Jack Hyde Park. This is essentially just a little bit adjacent to Tacoma Reconciliation Park. And it's right on the end of Old Town as you move south towards the city of Tacoma. This is one of my favorite places to launch either a stand-up paddleboard or a kayak. So if anybody is looking to do this tour sort of solo, this is a really good beach to do it. You've got parking right here that leads into Chinese Reconciliation Park, right along the railroad there. You can cross the street and then have nice, easy launch from the beach there. Now, looking up into Old Town here, this would have been the crown jewel of the timber industry out there. which you'll get to see a little bit more of here in a second. And then as we swing across, we're actually tracing our journey southward, moving down to where we're going to take our kayak tour today. And you get to see, there they are, the two ships that we're going to teach you a little bit more about here in a second. And right down there, you can see the white swirl of the pathway. That's Chinese Reconciliation Park. And then moving out across, that's all Commencement Bay. You can see the Port of Tacoma down there to the far end of the bay. Straight across is Browns Point. You can't see the lighthouse right here, but you can envision it. Then down that waterway, you'd eventually cross up into Seattle, and then cruising right over here, you get to see Vashon Island directly ahead. And you can even see, hopefully, depending on what device you're on, the white dot of the ferry way down there. And then we'll come back down. So what are these, you might be asking? If you've ever cruised down along the Ruston Waterway, you've probably seen these two ships that are down there. And I want to see if I can take you guys in really quick. I've got some sweet photos of them that I'll share with you guys really quick. So hands down, I think I get more questions about what the heck these are than anything else. So let's take you in really quick before I go back here. So these are two ships. They're from 1976. They're 684.8 feet, if you want to be specific, long. And what they are they're disaster relief ships. A lot of people assume that they're naval ships, but they're technically under the Maritime Administration, and they're federal relief ships. And they're strategically placed here in the Tacoma area to be ready in case they need to be dispatched to address any kind of civil or military emergency. And each of them has a crew of 10 on board, and they just spend their time making sure that these ships are ready. And they're here because of the commercial port of Tacoma, but also they're very close to Joint Base Lewis McChord. So depending what you need to get on them or off them really quickly, you can load them up, have them ready, and then dispatch them all along the West Coast. And they're authorized to deal with any sort of disaster from Alaska down to California. And they're really, as you can see, extraordinary and pretty haunting. Like, a lot of people always ask me what they are. And like I said, a lot of people assume that they're naval ships, but in fact, they're federally owned ships that are just out there ready for any sort of disaster. Now, as we were cruising along, like I said, you got to see the smelter. This is from early 70s, I believe. This would have been the American Smelting and Refining Co., or ASARCO, as it was more commonly known in the area. And this was all set up by William Rust. Originally, they mostly operated with the smelting of lead, but because of its proximity to the mining operations in the area, the big money ended up in copper. And so for the majority of the career of this smelting and foundry here, they did copper. And that stack that you see there is the famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, stack, which was 562 feet tall. And they have some incredible footage of the demolition of it in 1993, when they brought in an engineering crew, placed charges on it, and brought the entire thing down. And there's a restaurant out in Point Ruston now, I think, that is named either 562 or 563. I forget which it is, but they are named after the height of that stack out there. And here's just a cool photo. This is actually gold. This was brought in from a Soviet ship where the mining operation didn't have the capacity to smelt this down themselves. So they brought in this unrefined gold ore in 1935, I believe, and had the ASARCO smelting company bring it down. But they did send quite a few Russian observers to make sure that none of that gold went missing along the way. But I just love that one. So now, if you've been down to Point Ruston, and if you cruise along on a kayak, you'll see these. These are the smelting buckets, an homage to out there. A lot of people assume that they're bells, weirdly enough, but they have a very similar shape and were actually cast by bell makers. you'll notice a similarity between bells, smelting buckets, and cannons, because all three were cast by essentially bell makers who were the original metal workers that had the capacity and the knowledge to create something that would withstand percussive action, explosions, and intense heat. So what do you know? Yep. See, thank you, Richard. Always backing me up here. Yeah, if you guys are interested in more, Southbound Magazine has a lot of great information on the ships that are out there. This is a good question, Susan. What causes the famous aroma of Tacoma? It depends which part of history you're diving into here. The most common cause of Tacoma's aroma is actually from the paper mill that's right down there in the port of Tacoma. While it has an incredible filtration system today, and they only use the chemical to break down that paper pulp on certain days throughout the month now, so it's much less common. The original aroma of Tacoma actually comes from the pollution of the Foss Waterway. There was such industrial pollution in the Foss Waterway that it actually created a very notable stink. But hands down, the biggest contributor to the aroma of Tacoma is actually a smear campaign from the city of Seattle, which paid quite a lot of money to brand the city of Tacoma with the aroma early on, after Seattle lost out to be the terminus for the railroad. So they made a big stink, one might say, about the entire thing. And so a lot of it is a smear campaign. Tacoma frequently smells quite good, but I will admit sometimes there's a funky smell. But you show me a large city out there that doesn't have a weird smell every now and then. Go ahead, I dare you. Let's dive back in before I get completely derailed. Here's an aerial shot of the newly done Dune Park. This is actually named because the author of Dune, Frank Herbert, is from the city of Tacoma, based a lot of his science fiction on his experiences here. And so this is a testament to his contribution to the literary world. It also is home to my favorite Chutes and Ladders experience ever. If you can see it, I'll try and make it bigger for you guys here really quick. Right over by that bridge that goes over the roadway over there that's elevated, you can just barely see what looks kind of like a shadow coming down the hillside there. That is actually a series of steps and slides. So you can walk all the way up to the top there and then take slides back down. And it is worth it for the child and all of us. This is a picture of the new Point Ruston development out there. And you can see it is very posh and swanky. And this is one of my favorite parts to take people along when we're doing any sort of kayak related experience out there. Now, another one of the things that we always get questions about is, what is this, the Point Ruston? And this is the historic Point Ruston ferry. It was acquired, I think, by Point Ruston in 2007, 2008. But it was originally built in Maine, interestingly enough. The Bath and Iron Works Corporation in Maine built this vessel in 1936, and it was used as a ferry in between the town of Newport and the small area of Goat Island, and operated like that for quite a long period of time until eventually in 1971 it was transferred to Washington State and was used as the ferry between Steilacoom and Anderson Island, and operated as a Washington State ferry for a long period of time. I think it wasn't until, oh, yikes, I forget the exact year that it was decommissioned. But a guy named R.T. Wallace purchased it, actually on eBay, and turned it into the historic ferry dinner cruise experience. So no, I'm sorry, Mike Cohen was the guy who purchased it. And then you did buy it on eBay. And so currently it's moored right out there, right off of Point Ruston, hence the name, and will occasionally take patrols through the Sound. It goes all the way up to Seattle, operates as a showroom, but it can also be used as a dinner rental. So this is another one of Old Town here, because we're cruising down. This is the definitive shot for me of the lumber industry out there. And this is of the first business ever on that waterfront. This, I don't know, it's sort of blurry, but is the Nicholas Dellin family from 1852. And it was just him and his business associate out there milling timber. And when they set up the first lumber mill out there in 1852, they were it. And a lot of that was disrupted by the Indian Wars. And so they actually ended up fleeing and then selling the business. So it picked back up again in 1869 with a guy named Charles Hanson, who built the steam sawmill and really brought a lot of prominence to the downtown area. And you could see that beehive burner on the top of the corner there, and then all of that lumber going out. And you guys know me, I love beehive burners. The Tacoma Glass Museum, which is in the Foss Waterway, that hot shop, that silver, strange looking structure out there has been designed to look like the beehive burners that used to pepper along the coast of Tacoma out there. And this is one of the ones out there. And it was used to essentially destroy excess wood without catching the entire town on fire. Right here, that's the mill that used to be where the Silver Cloud Hotel is today. And so all of those piers that you're looking out there, all that debris, that's this area right here. More of the rust and smelter, more of the lumber industry out there. And then, you know me, my favorite beehive burners. This is actually of Henry Mill in Old Town. And that would have been opened in 1925. Excuse me. And that was actually located right at North Star Street. And that, I think, is one of the more prominent historical mills in the history of Old Town out there. And they actually used to specialize in the construction of bridges and hangars, weirdly enough. And here's one just to give you some context and reference of Job Carr Cabin. The Job Carr Cabin Museum is a huge supporter of the city of Tacoma, and they're located right down there in Old Town today. And this is another one of the historic waterfront. This is right outside of Old Town and shows you a lot of the small craft that you used to operate in there. Now, as you're going down the waterfront, if you're walking specifically, you might notice a small bronze statue up there commemorating the memory of the top of the ocean. So what is the top of the ocean? And this is it. It looks like a luxury liner, right? But this is actually a fixed restaurant. There are so many people that I've talked to who have memories of the top of the ocean cruising around Commencement Bay, which is, to the best of my knowledge, an impossible feat because it is a building. It's not a ship at all, though it looks like one. In fact, I think you can see it in this one. It's built up on those same piers that you see a lot of out on the historic waterfront. And it was built, I'm trying to remember. I forget the year that it was actually built, but pretty early on. And it was used by the Tacoma Athletic Commission as a private clubhouse and a luxury restaurant out there. A lot of people had their proms out there. But tragically, it was burned down in 1977 in an act of arson. And the guy who set it ablaze, if you see any of the mug shots of him, he was a piece of work. And he wasn't the brightest bulb in the arson camp. He actually took a taxi to the top of the ocean, had the taxi driver help him unload all of his accelerant, and then went over and set the entire thing on fire. So he wasn't difficult to catch. But it ended up bringing down an entire criminal syndicate because it was a mob hit operation that brought down the top of the Tacoma. And so it is an interesting anecdote in the history of Tacoma. But a lot of people that grew up in this area have very fond memories of dining at this sweet ocean liner. So let's take you back to our footage because we're about to go past the Temco facility here. These grain silos I talk about a lot because they're such a prominent part of the Tacoma waterfront. And Temco actually stands for Tacoma Export Marketing Company. So let's take you guys back in here really quick. And I'll check on any questions you guys might have while we go in. Here we go. This is some of my favorite footage too, because anytime you take a sup or a kayak down along the waterfront there, you just get such incredible experiences being so close to the large ships out there. It's daunting when you're in a little craft out there, and you've sometimes got dolphins or fish cruising on one side. I think the most exciting thing I've personally seen out there are the sea lions. While the seals can be an exciting experience because their giant beady eyes just slowly rise out of the water and watch you as you cruise past, the sea lions have no cares in the world, and one of those big bulls will just erupt out of the depths of Commencement Bay and just bob in the water, anywhere from like 15 to 20 feet away from you, and just watch you. And I always forget how massive they are, but those bulls, they're big boys. So right across there, you can actually see the Port of Tacoma and a lot of the operations out there. All of those cranes are constantly unloading or reloading the ships that come in the area. And I love that there are still Foss tugboats operating in Commencement Bay, as it should be, because the Foss maritime industry, while it is now based in Seattle, was originally built out here in Tacoma. So this is the Temco grain silo, and you can see their huge operation here. Under this covered awning, they have these tubes that come out and dump just hundreds of tons of grain into these massive ships that come from as far away as China and India. In fact, for a period of time there, the largest consumer of grain exported from Tacoma was actually Pakistan. You can also see that those tugboats roaring past us have created some waves here. So I'm probably, going to cut away here in a second. I just love cruising past these ships. So remarkable there. So now we're about to cruise down into the Foss Waterway, and welcoming us into the Foss Waterway is actually Thea's Park, right there on the edge with that giant globe and the flag waving out there. And Thea's Park wasn't an original part of the Tacoma waterfront. It's an addition of landmass. Originally underneath it, there would have been piers designed for a lot of the commercial docks out there. So, excellent question. Are there rules about how close you can get in a kayak to the ships? There is a standoff order for the emergency response to federal ships that we talked about earlier. That's 150 feet, and they will come out and harass you if you're getting too close. And that's their prerogative because they're designed to be out there preparing for an emergency, and they don't need anyone mucking about. The general understanding is 150 feet for the large grain ships as well. They're a little more lax. And while there are strict rules as to how they should navigate, if you've ever seen one of those pilot around in the water, they move very slowly. So the unofficial rule of thumb is just to stay away from them so that you don't get smushed. And yeah, where's our unofficial sponsor? Aries the cat is back here joining us today. He's a proud supporter of the Tacoma Historic Preservation community in general, and really loves history so intensely. You can see it in his eyes every day. So let's take you guys now in. We're actually going to cruise past the Temco grain silo, and I get to take you guys now into one of my favorite parts, down into the Foss Waterway. And the Foss Waterway, I think, when I encourage people to get out and interact with the Tacoma waterfront, I think you've got two sort of starting points. You can launch from the Owens Beach area, right in Point Defiance, and that's an incredible area for sort of just the wild nature of it. But the current is swifter, and there's an opportunity that you can go a little bit farther than you were expecting. If you're looking for a nice entry-level kayak experience, launching from the Foss Waterway gives you a ton to look at and much more navigable waters for the amateur kayaker, I think is my best advice on that. Let me take you guys back to our display here because we've got some cool stuff. So that's the Temco grain silos. Here you can see, I think this is a 1948 aerial there. And that stretch of water that comes in is the Foss Waterway. And you can see the 11th Street Bridge going across it there. And all of this is due to the Foss family, really. Andrew, and then most prominently Thea Foss, were the movers and the shakers who came down, built a maritime industry down there, and were really huge proponents in developing that waterfront and helping people get back and forth across it. They created the Foss tug industry, which brought in all of those ships, originally the tall ships that were onloading and offloading cargo. And then again, as things moved out onto the tide flats and Port of Tacoma expanded, they were responsible for a lot of those operations. So you actually got to see that Foss tug there a second ago. They're still very active out there. Now, one of the interesting things that you won't get to see today as we cruise through the Foss area is actually the 15th Street Railroad Bridge. Here's a picture of it with a Foss tug taking, I forget what, I think it's a heat treating cylinder for a creosote plant is what's pictured here, being carried along on a barge. But that bridge in the top section there, let's see if I can get you a better look at it. There you go. So this was built in 1914 and unfortunately destroyed in 1983, and it would pivot. It was a railroad bridge, and it could swing back and forth, and it crossed at 15th Street. So further south down the Foss Waterway than the 11th Street Bridge, the lift bridge that most people are familiar with. And anytime you needed to go through, they had to swing it around, and then trains could actually come from Port of Tacoma across and then continue their way up and along. The bridge that I think is the most photographed, the most well-known, and most beloved in the area is the 11th Street Bridge there, fittingly enough, built in year 1911. And we'll get to see some more of that. I think it's like, 1,957 feet long. And it lifts. So you can see that center section there. Anytime they need to get something through, and depending on the height of the ship and the height of the tide, it goes through there. And it's officially named the Murray Morgan Bridge. And there's so many reasons for famed journalist and Tacoma historian Murray Morgan to have had his name on this bridge. My personal favorite is that he was a major benefactor and connector of the community. And as the 11th Street Bridge was for a very long period of time the only way to get from Port of Tacoma to the main downtown corridor of Tacoma, it is the vital connection to that there. So I think it's a good homage to him. Here's a classic, one of the historic Tacoma postcards that drift around even today, showing from the Port of Tacoma side looking towards City of Tacoma. And here's just a cool schematic of it so that you can see sort of the design of it and how it's built on a slope and how sort of deep it goes into the water there. We're also going to cruise past the Foss Waterway Seaport. Here's a historic photo of that really quick. So let's take you guys in, if we can. And yes, they are absolutely the family that the Foss High School is named after. So right there, you get to see Thea's Park and the very active rail line that still runs right down there. Now, this is I call it the Rock the Dock building. It's a multiplex. It's just the dock building. I had a traffic jam out here on the water. Several families of geese were slowing me down.
Thanks, guys. Just lean through.
So as we cruise on down here, it looks like someone's husband's in the building down here. It's a cool space. They have a lot of offices, a restaurant. I think Red Chair Media is in there. It's very cool. But I'm going to take you guys up in the sky here really quick so that you can see a little bit more both of the historic 11th Street Bridge, but also of the expanse of the Foss Waterway. And I love that you get to see the Amtrak, the commuter train, cruising by here in a second. So this is the space that we're working with. The Rotunda building back there, 1888, that is the Northern Pacific headquarters building. The rail company that really put the money in the infrastructure into developing the downtown area had their office right there. And then right over here, just to the left, there's the Foss Waterway Seaport Museum in the last remaining historic section of the mile-long grain storage warehouse that used to span this section here. This is one of my absolute favorite views of the city of Tacoma, and it's such a rare one to get because very few people go down on the waterfront here. But you can see all of the really just gorgeous buildings out there and a surprising amount of really nice yachts in the downtown section here. And this is actually the origin of the Pretty Gritty Tours name, because we love the gritty side of Port of Tacoma here, just smashed together with the pretty side of historic downtown Tacoma. And I think that juxtaposition is something that's just a great part of any place to explore. Also, as we're cruising down here, you should get an opportunity. You can just see it right behind the bridge right now, the red fireboat that's owned by the city out there. It still patrols out on the waterfront and is the #1 weapon used in combating maritime or shore fires of any kind out there. So in a second here, we're actually going to cruise underneath the 11th Street Bridge. If you can see it right on the left there, that's the building where the historic Foss Waterway Seaport is. And it looks just like a dock grain building. There's my fire ship, the Crowley, and such a cool fire response ship. You can see some of the more emergency response vessels right down here in their original historic location, right next to the bridge. And here in a second, we're going to cross under it. Cruising right along here. I mean, it's magical to go under the 11th Street Bridge. Not as daunting as going under the Narrows. The Narrows can get some pretty swift currents. And so as you're kayaking along through that, you'll see the water really ripping along the base of that bridge. But with the 11th Street Bridge, it's always nice and chill. And you can actually just, as you can see here, gently paddle right underneath it. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to Rusty and Tawny here, because while I sail kayaked almost 14 miles for this whole thing, they had to paddle 9 miles through the day on their SUPs. So well done, those two. So here's a more expansive view of the Foss Waterway here. That's the Albert Mills building straight ahead, followed by the silver cone of the Tacoma Glass Museum. And then you get to see a lot of the condo development down there, including at the bottom left-hand corner of that, the Social is a really cool restaurant right down there as well, that I think is a good stop if you're doing a kayak tour down there. And then you get to see, as we cruise over, the very industrial, hardworking, blue-collar port that really makes Tacoma what it is. Looking back that direction, you'll see there's quite a lot of cubbies. There's actually shipwrights, shipbuilders in the area out there. And then these two buildings are actually dry dock storage for the ships out there. And it's cool. They have like a 2-story forklift that they use to take boats in and out of it. And every now and then you'll see it. It's a comical thing to see, because they'll just lift a boat, like 50 feet up in the air, take it off of its shelf, and then take it back down so that it can be put back in the waterfront and dispatched out there. So let's take you guys back down really quick, because now that we're in the Foss Waterway, I get to share some of the cool stuff about that section down there. One of the big things that I'm passionate about surprising, hopefully no one right now, is treasure salvage, underwater treasure salvage, and maritime historical research. And there are going to be quite a few exciting things coming up from the Pretty Gritty Tours area, looking underneath Commencement Bay at the things that are down there. I can't give you too much more info on that. Needless to say, it's going to be pretty cool. So down here on the Foss Waterway, one of the biggest changes to the waterfront is Half Moon Bay here. And to show you what it used to look like, it was a Half Moon Bay. And the Northern Pacific Railroad Company really wanted to turn that into essentially like a switching yard and create more space for the trains. So they filled it all in, turning it into the rail area that you see today. This is basically what it looks like. As you can see, the Northern Pacific Railroad headquarters building is up still on the ridge there. That's the One Pacific building today. And it's directly across the street from Old City Hall, built in 1893. So that whole corner has got some deep historic flavor to it. This is a picture of the Foss Waterway Seaport building back when it was the Balfour Dock grain storage building. And you can see it's just down the hill from that massive structure up there that used to be the Great Tacoma Hotel before it was lost in a fire. But in the far right hand of this photo, you can actually see the spire of the Old City Hall building, which is still down there today. I love this photo, and I think while we're doing a virtual tour of the waterfront, something I wouldn't normally be able to show you guys is this photo. But this is from 1926, and this kid is William Case, or Bill Case, and he is on Foss tugboat number 12. And number 12 used to be the fire response ship out there. And so little Case here, his dad was the skipper of Foss tugboat number 12 and was the volunteer firefighter essentially for the Port of Tacoma until they invested the money into a very serious Big Bertha fire ship, which you can actually see down on the Ruston Way waterfront today. If you're cruising down there, there's a dry docked and displayed fireboat down there, and that was the main muscle in firefighting down on the Tacoma waterfront for a long period of time. But before that, it was Bill Case's dad on tugboat number 12 here, and I just love this photo down there. This is another one to sort of get you guys excited about maritime salvage, but this is the raising of the Rubaiyata. And the Rubaiyata was a steamer that sort of mysteriously sank on her way to Seattle, and Foss Maritime Industry was responsible for trying to haul this to the surface there, and it was only like 8 to 10 feet deep where the stern was. And so they actually used hoses from the tugboats to have divers put it underneath, and they tried to lift it out that way. But it was so heavy that they could never bring it back out. And so it's one of the many wrecks that is still down there on the water to this day. And it's something that we are going to talk about a little bit more. But with this, I think this is a cool opportunity to say, if you guys have any big questions, please let us know. And if you've enjoyed your tour, you're always free to tip your guide. Completely unnecessary. Again, these are free to the public, brought to you by the City of Tacoma's Historic Preservation Office, but it's always appreciated if you want to. And you can always just do that right on the homepage of prettygrittytours.com. We have a little PayPal link there, so you can always show your appreciation that way. But please reach out, interact with the Historic Preservation Office. They do a phenomenal job posting on their social media and really engaging the community to look at these places that get overlooked and to help preserve them for future generations. And we are, as a company, honored to be a part of that with these virtual tours. So this was your safe and dry opportunity to look at the Tacoma waterfront from a kayak standpoint. If you guys have any interest in getting out and experiencing the waterfront on your own or with a guide, please let us know. Reach out at prettygrittytours@gmail.com. We have the means to get people out and to experience some waterfront down there, and we'd be happy to talk to you guys about it. So, Wendy, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this. If you guys have any other questions, please let us know. We're always around, and we've got some exciting stuff going up. We have a social justice tour for the City of Tacoma that's going to be coming up here in October. And then we have one of the tours I'm most excited about. It is a virtual experience looking at the City of Tacoma then and now, where we're going to take historic photographs and looks of the city and then juxtapose it to what they look like now and talk about the history of those moments in time. So thank you, guys. We'll see you soon. As always, I'm Captain Chris Stottinger, encouraging you to keep on exploring.